Hi, and welcome everyone to today's webinar, Build Your Own Personalization Playbook. Today, we're going to go through one of my favorite topics, personalization, and how it will help you better resonate with your customers, drive engagement, and boost sales. My name is Mårten. I'm a Senior Director Solution Strategy at Optimizely. And before we start, just a little bit short about Optimizely if you don't know about us yet. So Optimizely is a world leader in digital experience. We operate in the fields of content marketing, content management, commerce, digital optimization, which means experimentation, and today's topic, personalization. We have 10,000 brands across the globe, and we do this with the help of our digital experience platform called Optimizely One. So it's one platform that is composable based on content marketing platform, a content management system, commerce platform, personalization, experimentation, and data. So using this today, we're going to talk a little bit about just the challenges and what you need to do to actually also deliver good personalization. So the agenda today is we're going to quickly run through a little bit about the business case of personalization and a little bit also why is this topic becoming way more high in the agenda today than it might have been during the last years. We're going to talk about the core principles of successful personalization, and of course we're also going to put it all in practice, especially in how do you do this in B2B. I'm going to actually have a use case on our own brand in terms of how are we working with personalization. So personalization is not a new topic. I think we've been talking about this for a long time. It didn't start in the digital world. It's been around a long time, even since we've been in the brick and mortar lines. But we've been hearing it, of course, in terms of like with Google has been using a lot of data to deliver better experiences, especially on third-party sites. We've been talking about companies like Spotify and Netflix learning a lot about you. And it's been around for a while. And I think like one of the first people that were talking about this topic in terms of also putting it into digital context was David Edelman, the author of Segment of One that was published already in 1989. And the fun part of this is that it hasn't really changed a lot in terms of how we view personalization, because even back then, it's about putting the customer at the center of everything you do. It's not just about gathering data, but using it in a way that creates value for the customer. And I would say it's not just the value for the customer, it's actually a combination that a perfect personalized experience is delivering value for both the organization and for the customer. And is this valuable? Is this something that we need? Is this something that we should be focusing on? Well, yes, first of all, there's a couple of things now that is driving the topic of personalization. One of them is that customers expect a personalized experience. We see this all in all in different types of measurements and reports that customers are more likely to shop with brands that offer personalization. They are more willing to share personal data for the ones that are also delivering personal experiences, and they're in general like willing to actually pay a higher price if they get a good experience. But at the same time, a lot of the consumers and customers out there are also a little bit skeptic in terms of it, because at one point they do believe that personalization is good, because when they're looking at the biggest frustrations with digital experiences, they say that it's actually quite hard to find what they're looking for. So they want that personalized experience. But on the other hand, they also feel that it's very creepy when customers or like when companies are using this wrong. And one of the biggest frustrations is when they try to personalize and when they get it wrong. So even though a lot of people see that personalization is at the top of the agenda and that they really want it, most actually feel that they don't get one. Very low percentages of consumers today actually agree that they get the experience that they expect from the customers out there or the companies out there. And those expectations are always on the rise. So we have a high expectation, but we're also seeing customers being frustrated that they're not getting that delivered. So to another point of what's the driver. So we already went through a little bit about why people want personalization, but there's also an increase in concern about the data and privacy. So We've seen already that a lot of the new legislation and laws around the world, we see that a lot of companies are struggling. I know, like a historical 293 million have been fined in Europe since the implementation of GDPR, and this is actually a 1-year-old data. And we also see that a growing concern about like what is the for type of data that you're actually collecting about you. So while we actually have drivers of personalization, we do also have some concerns. But we can also see that concerns are maybe high, but the willingness to share data to get something back is increasing. And that might not come as a surprise with, like the millennials and especially the Gen Z population, which is grown up with apps that are quite used to having questions asked, or even like things like understanding what type of music you're listening to. And I think like the yearly wrap up of Spotify kind of signals that as well. It's something that people highlight. It's something that people even share. It's something that people value, that they actually being able to understand what is it that it's type of music that I'm listening to, and more or less create a wrap up of that for the end of the year. Another thing we're seeing is the change also in the channels that we're looking at. So we're seeing that organizations are moving towards first-party data and zero-party data. What does that mean? Well, we've been used to using third-party data in third-party channels like advertising on Google or Meta for quite some time. But with moving towards a cookie-less future, it's not going to be as easy to actually buy those segments, to target them on third-party sites. And instead, you actually have to start collecting them. And we also been using the data in the outbound channels, so primarily been segmenting our email database, or even who we're sending SMS towards. But an increase in interest is actually their own inbound channel. And why is that? Well, first of all, I would say that your inbound channel, your web, your app, etc., is one of the only times when the customer or consumer is actually there by their own will. So think about it. Usually you're not out at Instagram to look for ads or look for inspiration, because that's usually being pushed towards you. You're usually not sitting home waiting for a marketing email to drop in your inbox. But when you are at the site, you're definitely there to look for inspiration, or even look to sort something out like buying something. So in your inbound channels is where you actually have the full attention of your audience. There's different types of personalization going through that as well, looking at what types of data. Of course, there's this one size fits all personalization, which is actually not personalization at all. It's where you're delivering the same experience for everyone. But you can also deliver it to many, and think about it as when you're adapting your messaging towards, for example, a mobile device. That's one sort of personalization, where you're actually having to take a lot of information that you have on desktop and put it in a nicely neat manner in a smaller device. We can also start looking at what people have been buying, what they've been like interested in, the browsing behavior. We can connect this to other groups of buyers to see like the lookalike audiences. And then we're coming up against where it's like in the top, where you're starting to like look at connecting a lot of types of data to deliver these one-to-one personalized experiences as well. So this is a little bit what we're going to go through today as well, like from segmentation towards hyper-personalization. And we used to deliver content quite static. So we're looking at one type of content that you, for example, delivered on your website. We might be running A/B tests to deliver the best overall generic experiences. But with new technology, we are now seeing something else, like customer data platforms, in which you can start segment your audience in groups of people. So not just looking at all of your visitors on your website, but seeing also patterns in different segments of your audience. We're also seeing this, of course, in terms of advancements in generative AI. So the next phase now with new technology is also about looking at not just delivering the best generic experience, but how can we use new technology to deliver the best individual possible experience that we can in these channels. And it does deliver value. This is benchmark data from a report from 127,000 experiments run by our customers. So it's data on real customer engagements from our customers that shows like by using data and using segments, you're delivering more value. And even so, integrating this to not just delivering the best experience and do tests and run experiments on all of your visitors, by doing this by a segmented way to a certain amount of your visitors, you can deliver up to 80% higher impact. So personalization is very impactful. And we do see that customers are like the companies that do this well. We already talked about Spotify. It's something that everyone knows, that when you really do this well, it's becoming that perfect match when the company is getting value from it and the customers are also, liking it. David Edelman, like one of the fathers of like personalization, also actually wrote a new book, which is Personalized Customer Strategy in the Age of AI. And it's quite interesting also to see like, what do you actually then have to do? What is these like Spotify's doing, the Netflix, the Amazon's doing to deliver the best of personalization? And the fun part of this, if you're going to like summarize it in two ways, they actually run more personalization campaigns faster. So they do just more, but they also are able to A/B test that these experiences that you try to do deliver the value that you believe you do. So the top 10% of companies in the world delivering on personalization is actually focusing on delivering more campaigns faster and also testing them. And through this book as well, what you could actually read, and this is from Boston Consulting Group, is that they see three main like benefits for companies in the end. They are growing faster, so they're actually making more revenue than their competitors. They are also having the happiest customers when you're looking at Net Promoter Score, and they also have superior valuation when you're looking at the greater total shareholder return. So these are three amazing and big impacts that you get if you do personalization right. But if that is like everything that you have to do, and if there's so many benefits, why are not everyone doing it? Because it's hard to do. And we see that there are like definitely four top marketing challenges according to research. One thing is just creating the content that you need to create to deliver it, because a personalized experience needs to be a different experience based on the audience. It's also hard to actually understand the audience, to actually be able to know who are we actually going to create these types of personalized experience for. It's also about the delivery. We know about our different audiences, but we're not able to push that messaging out. And it's also about the understanding the true value and the business impact and the drivers and the insights of personalization. So the hard part of personalization, it's really a team sport. And in this team sport, you need 5 critical capabilities to deliver that the promise of personalization. The first one is to put the customer needs first and to be able to plan where does personalization actually deliver most value, for whom, in what channel, and in what experience do you actually have to do. You, of course, have to understand, create that 360-degree view and focus also on getting those permissions to learn more about your customers. But when you do, you need to also scale up your content creation to actually be able to not just understand, but deliver on those experiences. You need to be able to target your audience and also recommend the right type of content. And last but not least, you need to understand and continuously test and iterate these experiences to make sure that this is actually delivering on the promise of personalization. So it delivers on an increased value of your personalization efforts. But more or less, these are the 5 things you need to be able to focus on. So how do we do this at Personalization at Optimizely? We now know that it's important to deliver a good experience through personalized experiences. We have talked a little bit about the 5 areas that you need. Let's put this into a little bit of a practice. So there are 3 things that we always ask ourselves, and you should also ask yourself. The first one is like, what is our goal? What is the metrics that we want to actually track? And what is it that we're trying to affect? that's also important to understand, like, is this delivering on the promise and what we actually want to do? What kind of experiences that we want to create? So what are the moments that matters, and who is your audience? So would it be for existing customers coming back on your website? Would it be from the first time visitors coming in from paid channels? It's important to look at, like, where can you actually make the best impact? And one of the most important things is also to start looking at what is it that you're actually trying to do. I know that this slide might look a little bit busy, but usually what we're seeing is that you should always try to align your business strategy to digital goals. That's where you're actually delivering the most value. So what is it that your brand wants to achieve, and how do you tie that to different kind of goals? And those goals can be, of course, to drive more sales and leads, but it can also become like reducing costs. Use personalization to make sure that you are not, advertising to the wrong audience, which means that you don't have to spend as much money on your third-party sites as well, by becoming smarter in your advertising efforts. But it's also about driving efficiencies, create more content faster, make more out of the time that you had, but also around a little bit about how do we make sure that we're future-proofing our stack. So more or less, personalization efforts are ending up in one of these buckets. We're talking about segmentation versus hyper-personalization. And when we're looking at this in our personalization pyramid, we're looking at, like, how can we, of course, optimize our universal experience with minimal and no personalization. Our most basic part of personalization, we're looking at data points at where are they actually physically in the world, which channels are they coming in from, organic search or paid search or emails, are they new or returning visitors, so broad segments. For us, it's also important to understand, like, what are the industries they're in, because it can tell us what they might be interested in. Their engagement, which means that what have they been browsing? So depending on there, what would they be interested in? We're also, of course, looking at some specific industries in ICP. Is this like a customer that fits our ideal customer profile? How far down in the funnel, so like what type of content are they actually consuming? Are they there right now to get inspired, or are they actually there to evaluate different solutions in terms of what we're actually offering? And then we're looking at, combining all of these types of data as well to see, like, how can we better, tag these data points together to do this. Once we actually have the data points, we're using them in the delivery in a rules-based way. So an example of that is that this is the default website where we're actually pushing for our world-leading content management system. But if we start to see that the behavior and interest is more around experimentation or personalization, this message on the main website changes based on the behavior. So that's one of the examples. Another example is that we're stitching data in terms of industry data that we actually get from third-party sites as well. So we can understand if this visitor comes from a specific industry. So instead of delivering a generic website and landing page around personalization, in this case, we're delivering why personalization is delivering value and what you can do for the banking industry. So trying to be a little bit more, relevant. This is, of course, great because it's completely customizable. You can do absolutely anything with it. You can create experiences based on more or less any types of data. You can add images, you can add texts, you have unlimited control, and it's quite simply to implement. But it can also be complex because there's a lot of different types of rules, and you might be finding yourself tangled into multiple rules that you're setting up, and it can be very intensive and very manual. So we're also having recommendations. So usually people know about the product recommendations that you see on the sites. Other people also bought this. We're talking more about content recommendations. So what content recommendation does is that it actually looks at every page of your site, and it starts to understand using smart language models of what is the topics of this page or this article, etc. So it starts to divide it down into small topics. Then it starts to look at you as a person depending on what you're browsing on and seeing like, what kind of topics then does this person seems to be interested in? And then, like any dating app, it starts to actually match the person's interests based on the article. So it actually changes the content automatically based on the individual interest of the person, based on what they actually been browsing. There's a lot of scalability with this, like totally automatic, and you can enhance its one-to-one personalization. You can enhance that user experience, and it always also makes sure that all of the content that you have, it delivers the most relevant content to the people. On the other hand, the drawbacks is that you only recommend the personalized content that exists on your website. And you, of course, need to have quite a lot of content on your website to make this efficient. So there are some, concerns around, how much data and how much content you have available as well. But you could combine these and actually combine targeting and recommendations based on these known profile. So if we have, for example, prospective customers, we have existing customers, but we also have partners that helps our customers implement our platform. So if we know that they come in, from example, from a partner newsletter or similar, we can actually look at recommending content that is based on only interested of the partners. So you can even steer these recommendations a little bit to not just be same for everyone, but kind of becoming recommendations based on the first click, that it only recommends content that is coming from that partner pool of content that you actually have. That's great, but how do I make it 3 million different experiences? Well, it's very hard to do proper personalization if you don't have a memory of the people that you're interacting with and what they've been doing. So we're usually talking about short-term memory that you can do in browsing behavior, what geographic location they're coming in from, what time of day, and that can actually be very powerful personalization. But to get a little bit more sophisticated, you need to have a kind of like a long-term memory, like a customer data platform, or as we are using our optimizely data platform to also do this. This gives you and us actually a possibility to look at 3 different levels, or even more different types of levels of experiences, where you take one piece of data and you stitch it together to deliver more granular experience. So think about it as level 1. You might just take one part of your data sets, like product affinity. You're interested in personalization. Then in level 2, you might want to add, from where are you? Can we figure out something more around you? What device are you looking into? And then we can stitch this to more and more data to become more granular in this. So do we know that you're interested in personalization? We can, of course, we shouldn't talk about content management or experimentation. We should talk about personalization when you land on our website. But if we also actually know that you are within the travel industry and that you're coming in from a certain area, we can actually start to deliver how personalization is delivering value within the travel industry or airlines in this specific. We can even create these kind of specific audiences, and we can see in the, create content based on what we know about the person, as you can see down in the left. And the more data you have, you can also start looking at, well, this person has been visiting us many times. It starts to also actually go through our RFP templates or other things. It looks like this person is actually actively out to evaluate different platforms. And then you can serve relevant content by looking at different types of customer cases that can help them more or less looking at what personalization can actually deliver for value for them in the context of our platform. So that's kind of 3 levels. But as an end of this as well, to wrap this up, this is very hard to scale. We talked about being able to have 5 different areas that you need to master. You need to be able to look at different sets of segments of your data. You need to be delivering this in both recommendations and in targeting. It becomes a lot of work. And this is also why personalization now is becoming a hot topic again. It's that AI is unlocking new possibilities. You can, instead of doing manual rules, start to do dynamic algorithms. Manual content can become automatic content. Limited scalability, now we can start to do, like personalization in real time. And we've been looking at generative AI, and this is from a research report coming out this year as well. It's about like new tools circles mostly around content production and ideation, which is fair enough, fair game, but it's not until you start to actually embed this into your existing products that you also start to see the delivery of not just creating, some small text that you can send out an email, but when you can actually start to connect the data and the content to actually sit there, because like the experiences sits in the middle of content and data, where you can start looking at personalization. So earlier, in a couple of years ago, we talked about AR wrappers, which more or less, think about it maybe as a chatbot that was using, language models in like and then as a wrapper. But we also started to see like, like they're becoming a little bit like commoditized, and instead we're starting to talk about our own language models that are being commoditized. But instead, looking now into like, where do we see that AI is delivering most value? Well, it's not in wrapping something in a nice little, package. It's not maybe about creating your own language models, because it's also quite hard to do. The value also usually sits in the application. So from a generic low quality generative AI to actually looking at how can we take this and implement so it makes proper value in your business case. So instead of just looking at it as the first basic draft, like this is great, a small idea, to actually become helpful for you. And this is something that we're looking at, of course, now when we're seeing operator, when generative AI is becoming more of like your personal helper. It does not just no longer provides you an idea of like, what is the text that I can write this email? It can actually go in and go and book things for you, like trips or hotels, or even buy things online. And this is kind of where we're seeing that like AI is becoming part of applications. We have our own AI agent called Opal, and we're going to, finalize this and wrap this up a little bit in like, how can AI actually deliver value in terms of these critical capabilities? Because AI is mostly delivering value in terms of either doing what you need to do already today, increase the effectiveness or increase the efficiency of it. So in the first phase is like, how can you actually plan? How can AI automatically go into your site and give you advice of where do you actually need to operate? Where can you optimize, or where can you actually run personalization on your site? Where can we actually find the areas in which you are becoming too generic, and actually give you examples of it? It can tell you, where are you missing content right now? People seem to be engaging a lot in this types of personalized content, but you don't have enough. So you need to produce more to more or less satisfy the amount of content that people are looking for. It can even start helping you and create and plan and even deliver campaigns. So it more or less automatically sets up campaigns instead of you having to do this in a manual steps. It understands data and segments of your customers, so it actually can tell you like, what are the segments of customers that you're trying to target? Where can we find like these valuable people? And if you would be doing some personalization, where could we actually deliver that right now? How can we create content? How can we just come up with ideas in like how we can create 3 different? So please write me, a headline towards existing customers that has an affinity for shoes, for example. So also in the content creation process. But it can also start to deliver and learn. So instead of recommending content or doing it rules-based, it starts to understand of looking at what are the attributes of customers clicking and interacting with based on it. And it actually starts to learn and starts to personalize out dynamically based on what it learns about your different audiences and what seems to be resonating with them. And last but not least, it's of course important to look at how can you analyze this by maybe also having like these holdback groups that you also make sure that are never exposed on a personalization campaign. So you can actually look at the proper value and the deep analytics, even looking at like warehouse analytics data to see what is the true value, and go beyond these like vanity metrics like the clicks or even like a conversion on your site. So that was kind of the end of the presentation today. So I thought we're going to wrap this up a little bit about what we've been talking about. Personalization is coming back right now, and there's three reasons for that. It's the increase of the expectations, and more customers are actually interacting in those digital channels. We have privacy concerns, so it's also one of the areas where the topic is high, but it's also about looking at what can you do with your first party data, and how can we deliver a better experience based on like a mutual value between you and your customers. We're seeing advancements in technology, especially generative AI, and this is also pushing the boundaries of what we can do with personalization. Personalization is a team sport, and it's not just one thing you need to be able to do. You need to be able to plan, understand, create, deliver, and analyze to deliver on the promise of personalization. And AI is also starting to take the center stage here. And it needs to be context aware, so understanding your data. It needs to be connected between these products to understand how we can plan, create segments of customers and deliver them, so across those channels. And it needs to be agentic, so kind of like your helper that is not just providing you results, but can actually work for you. With that said, that is kind of wrapping up this session. I hope this was valuable for you. And if you want to get in contact with me, you have my email here as well. But otherwise, please also go into www.optimizely.com. And I hope that we are seeing each other in another webinar or in another channel shortly. Thank you very much for listening in.